And welcome to Fourth and Inches, Arizona State Edition. I'm Jordan D'Souza alongside Nathaniel Smith and Christian Egerbide. Before we get into the week's action, Nate, how was your Thanksgiving?
Well, I'm one to really appreciate the Thanksgiving holiday. It's a great time with family and friends. I was anticipating it very heavily for the weeks approaching. You know, this time of year between Halloween and Christmas, best time of year in my opinion. Thanksgiving is up there as one of the best holidays. Don't think I can put it as number one, but it's definitely up there. Had a great time. Ate lots of turkey. But my favorite dish, bit of a curveball, deviled eggs. Big deviled eggs guy. So enjoyed those. Good time with family and friends. Just a great overall atmosphere, so I have no complaints.
Definitely. I'm a big Thanksgiving guy as well. I think this time of the year is definitely the best for holidays. You got Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, all within like a 1 month span. Essentially, then that's when the NFL kicks up. So just a lot of good action. I'm going to go with my favorite food on Thanksgiving. I'm going to have to go with mashed potatoes on this one because I'm a big proponent for filling up on sides instead of actually eating the main dish. It just kind of happens that way. So I always get myself like 2 scoops of mashed potatoes before the actual food comes out. And then, I'm just done for the rest of the meal.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Thanksgiving foods, my family usually goes with some mac and cheese to go with the mashed potatoes and gravy, turkey, those usual Thanksgiving dishes. But the mac and cheese is always so crucial. But, yeah, Thanksgiving, no complaints at all. One of the better holidays out there. Just a lot of family vibes, just everyone's trying to eat, watch some football. Not really do much else, just give thanks. It's definitely a good little concept there. So yeah, just kicked it with a bunch of my homies back home in Southern California, and no complaints at all. I had a great holiday.
Definitely, mac and cheese sounds like a great Thanksgiving meal. We actually didn't have that at our dinner because my parents are very healthy. So some of our sides, other than the mashed potatoes, included quinoa and Brussels sprouts. So that kind of explains the whole loading up on mashed potatoes thing. All right, folks, now on to Friday's game. The Sun Devils, they pulled off the improbable here by losing 6 of their last games. We finished 5-7 on the year, losing to a team that was probably the worst team in the Pac-12, other than us. No one can really doubt that. But this game just kind of summed up the season as a whole. Just if you just look at the box score, I mean, Arizona ended up throwing the ball a total of 8 times for 1 touchdown, and still ended up putting up 56 points. I mean, the defense was nowhere to be found. Offense really only turned it on in garbage time. Nate, were you surprised at all by this outcome?
I'm not surprised that we lost because I knew we would somehow find a way to do that. But yeah, I am surprised by the amount in which we lost. I mean, giving up 56 points to a team that coming into this game had not won a single conference game and had 2 wins. I mean, it's a little unheard of. Even the biggest pessimists, I don't think, expected that one. So that was definitely a surprise. It just seemed like we weren't even awake for this game. It was close early, 7-7. We returned a fumble for a touchdown, and then it was just all downhill from there. They just ripped off touchdown after touchdown, and we could not keep pace. Yeah, as you mentioned, they only threw the ball 8 times and still hung 56 on us. So that's just atrocious performance by the defense, atrocious performance by the team. I would have fired Todd Graham right after this game. I'm not really sure how he still has a job. They said he's coming back next year. I don't know how you can get him embarrassed by the most important game of the year based on the rivalry merit and still come back as a head coach. But, yeah, ASU's got some big problems.
Definitely. And one of the glaring stats I'm going to look at here is U of A rushed for over 500 yards. 500. There's not even many teams that get around 500 yards in the game. They had more rushing yards than we had total yards. They had 3 different 100-yard rushers, ran for a total of 7 touchdowns, which is absolutely embarrassing. We just got bullied up front. And there's just nothing you can really do about it. I don't really know what to say at this point. I mean, it just capped off what was a really horrific end to the season. Christian, were you surprised at all by this outcome, or what kind of stood out to you?
Well, I mean, we've always talked about our passing defense, how we've struggled mightily in that area. And there were, some games where our run defense actually played well, and held them to, very low yardage. But coming into this game, we just totally, I don't know how, there's got to be some defect in our defense that we just don't want to tackle. We don't know how to tackle. 512 yards on 48 carries. That's 10.7 yards a pop on the ground for the Arizona team. That just means up at the line, they're just dominant. Their O-line's getting a good push, and our linebackers just aren't filling holes. No team ever should be able to, on the ground, just dominate you for 512 yards. That's just that's like your manhood. You know what I mean? If someone lines up against you and is like, yeah, we're going to run for 500 yards on you, that's just you cannot stop us. We'll do as we please. We'll rush for 7 touchdowns on the ground. Brandon Dawkins, as the quarterback, really didn't even have to do anything from, the typical, I'm going to throw the ball around the field standpoint. He only threw the ball 8 times. And, one of those went for a touchdown. So it's not like our pass defense was anything special. They just didn't throw the ball at all in this game. Only 8 passing attempts. So definitely, I think going into, the offseason now, such a disappointing end, being 5-1, thinking, oh, yeah, we'll probably snag a bowl game, and then losing 6 games in a row and just absolute disappointment. In previous times we've talked about this, I've always been Todd Graham deserves, maybe a year or 2 more, but I'm now at the standpoint where I'm kind of on Nate's side that he either should already be gone or, next season he's going to have to do something spectacular if he wants to keep his job.
Some positives to look at this team. At least we've been consistent, so we've been consistently being blown out, and also we've found a way to do things that most teams can't. I can't remember another team that only gave up 3 passing completions and ended up giving up 56 total points in that game. That is very hard to do. But Nate, for this horrible ending to our what actually looked to be somewhat of a hopeful season, who do you think's to blame?
Well, in a situation like this, you can't put blame on one person or one specific thing. It's just an entire team and organization effort here to collapse like this. This is truly something special in the negative sense of the word. Just absolutely unbelievable, like you guys mentioned, to be sitting at 5-1 after the UCLA game and to rip off 6 straight losses against, mostly good competition. Most of those teams were quality, but Arizona was just absolutely horrible this year, and we lost 56-35. I don't know. I think the blame has to start with Todd Graham and just his entire coaching staff, but you always got to start with the head coach in a situation like this where you lose by 20 to a rival who's significantly less talented than you. You got to start with the head coach. You got to look at administration. You got to look at the AD. You got to look at the team itself. Come on. It's just embarrassing by the players. I don't care what the coach's message was or lack of execution on the coach's part. As players, to go out and lose like this, it's just embarrassing. Offensively, defensively, just all sides of the organization really should be just absolutely ashamed.
Christian, who do you think's to blame for this horrible end of the season?
Like Nate said, the blame can be spread, kind of like gravy over your mashed potatoes or, your Thanksgiving turkey, just spread all around the program. I think, as I've said before, it's definitely the mindset of the whole team, just the culture of the program. You need to have a winning vibe. And that starts at the very top with the athletic director, the coach, just what you instill in your players, how you motivate them. That's definitely a big thing when it comes to how they feel when they take the field, whether they're confident with the scheme and what you guys are doing. So, if I'm on this defense, you can't be confident with your scheme when you're giving up 500 yards on the ground, and that leads to the players being these coaches are idiots. They're obviously not doing something right if, their scheme is giving up this type of yardage. And then when they start, dishing out the blame and not really taking ownership of it, they just kind of, don't want to go out there and give their all to you, bleed for you on the field. So I think as a coach, Todd Graham just needs to really have some more charisma with his players. You look at these successful coaches in the NFL, they just motivate their players. Belichick, even Pete Carroll with Seattle, like he's just a player's coach. Like people just want to go out and battle for him. So I don't see that in Todd Graham, and I think that's definitely one of the things that probably needs to change.
Yeah, I have a really tough time believing that our defensive players, at least, were that bad where they gave up 500 yards. I think a lot of the blame needs to go to the coaching staff. But also looking at this game, there are some positives, believe it or not, to take from this game. Manny Wilkins ended up with 372 yards and 3 touchdowns and rushed for 80 in addition to that. And then another spot that actually looked pretty good is our receiving core. N'Keal Harry, who's been a bright spot for us, finished with 9 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown, along with Frederick Gamage, who finished with 12 receptions, 100 yards, and a touchdown as well. But, Nate, looking ahead to next year, I mean, we're never really a team to have the best recruiting class in the conference. Are you feeling positive at all after this horrific game?
As far as recruiting?
Yeah, as just in general for next year.
If I'm a Division I level athlete and I was committed to Arizona State and I witnessed this blowout by a team that had 2 wins coming into the game, I changed schools immediately. I'm not feeling good about our recruiting class at all. I don't care who we have signed at the moment, which wasn't impressive to begin with. I guarantee there will be multiple dropouts by the time the season starts next year. I mean, I really just don't see any reason that anyone good would want to come to ASU right now. It's just the program's an absolute shambles. Honestly, one of the worst programs in the Pac-12 right now, aside from Arizona. I mean, us and Oregon State, probably at the bottom right now. Oregon had a rough year, but they still have some pull because they've had some recent success. UCLA had a down year because their quarterback was hurt. We don't have an excuse. Our whole team was pretty much healthy. We just played horribly. So I don't know. Recruiting class does not look good. As I mentioned, I really don't know who would want to come here that has any level of talent. But moving forward for next year, as you mentioned, our receiving core is a bright spot. N'Keal Harry, I believe, will be a draft pick in the NFL for sure. Probably top 3 rounds. He's an incredible talent. If they can just get someone to throw him the ball, he will probably continue to get better and better as the years go by. He had a great year for a true freshman. So I guess he's one of our few bright spots.
And just in general, looking ahead to next year, Christian, what do you think are some of the things that we can improve on outside of recruiting?
Well, I don't know really what our coordinator situation is, but I'd say the defense definitely needs just, a few changes. Right now, throughout the season, we gave up around 500 yards a game. That's definitely not going to put you in the best position to win because it's not like our offense is spectacular and our defense is subpar. Our defense is garbage and our offense is not much better. So when you put yourself in a hole like that with a bad defense, it really doesn't matter how good your offense is. As we've seen many times before, defense wins championships. So I think that's where it starts for Arizona State. Just having some type of identity on the defensive side of the ball, because right now I really feel like there's nothing. There's no purpose we go out there with on the defensive side of the football. We're just kind of trying to, make a stop or 2 in the game instead of saying, yes, we are the defense. You will not score against us. So just going out there with the mindset that you're not looking for a few stops a game. You're looking to only give up a few scores a game. We're just kind of letting ourselves get run all over. So that's where I think it starts is obviously the defense. Not sure what kind of pull Todd Graham will have with any defensive recruits like, hey, come here. We give up 500 yards on the ground in a game. But, the recruiting is going to be tough, which just means Todd Graham's going to have to just work with what he has and try to build from the inside out from this point.
Yeah, I think in general the team just needs this new just kind of like a culture change, just like a infusion of just some new like kind of culture in a way that we can actually look forward to this team moving in the right direction. But until then, we'll just be here criticizing them along every step of the way. This has been the last episode of 4th and Inches Arizona State edition. I'm Jordan D'Souza.
I'm Nate Smith.
And I'm Christian Agarbita.